Thanks for being here. Subscribe to Cheating Stories Best, so you don't miss new stories.
A wife fell in love with a man other than her husband, and this is what it turned into. Today's story has a similar plot. Enjoy watching it. My name is Wallace Banks. I was once married to a wonderful woman named Marion. We lived happily as husband and wife for 24 years, or so I thought, 21 years. One day, she decided to end it all. It turns out she had found herself a playmate named James Paxton, and they fell in love over 3 years. I'm a grown man. If someone doesn't want to stay with me, then it's their choice. It was painful. God, how painful it was. But such things happen. The betrayal really started to anger me when I learned that my 3 children, Jason, Michael, and Macy, all knew about the affair and their mother's plans to leave me. They didn't want to get caught in the middle of it, so they left me ignorant and blind. In essence, they sided with their mother. Bitterness doesn't even begin to describe how I felt. I bought a boat and set sail. Sometimes I did some charter work, but mostly I just tinkered. This went on for 7 years. Then my daughter Macy called. Her mom needed a favor. She had a new little girl named Karen and wanted me to take a test to see if I could be a kidney donor for her. It doesn't take a rocket scientist to understand the implications of this. My sons, not trusting my intelligence, came and explained that yes, my wife was pregnant, and I was the father when she left. I was ashamed to know them because they knew it too. What should you do when something like this is thrown at you? I decided to go to Bermuda. I was getting ready to leave when Marion arrived. I had already lifted the anchor, and the boat was sailing away from the dock when she ran up and jumped on board. The boat was about 7 feet from the dock when I turned off the engines. I was about to throw her overboard when a little girl walked up to the dock. She screamed to her mother. I told Marion to get off my boat. Marion took out handcuffs and chained herself to the mooring point. Wallace, I know you hate me right now, but she needs your help. Karen will die without a kidney. Please don't hurt her because of what I did. I know you're angry, but you're more than that. I looked at her for a minute and then laughed. Now do you believe in me as a good person? When you need something, it's just not good enough to stay with you. The girl shouted from the pier, "Everything is fine, dear." Marion shouted back, "Mom will fix everything." I felt a dark laugh well up within me, and I stepped on the gas of my boat again. Wallace, what are you doing? I'm going to Bermuda. I had planned to stop in St. Thomas first. Thanks for the company. I see you have packed light luggage, but what about Karen? Who is this Marion? I don't know any Karen. I've never met Karen, held her, or kissed her goodnight. She's your daughter. It's funny. I don't recognize her because I remember my children since I was there to raise them. Not very well, judging by how they turned out. I think this is your fault. What do you want? At this stage, we had already entered the channel and headed out to the open sea. I saw that several figures had joined the little girl, although I was too far away to see the details. I assumed they were my former family. I waved. Wallace, you need to turn back. I turned on my Android and took a few minutes to download the recording app. Apparently, I didn't bother to read the manual, so it took a few minutes. While I was doing this, Marion continued to talk in the background. Wallace, are you even listening to me? I finally booted the device. Not really. Can you repeat it? Wallace, we need to talk about saving Karen's life. Didn't you see how she staggered to the end of the pier? Marion, open the handcuffs and get off my boat. True, we were already almost 2 miles from the pier, but I said this for the sake of form. She just smiled at me. We can't do this. Jason has the only key and it's left on the dock, so you have a choice. Go back and help my daughter, or... I had already passed the buoy and increased my speed to cruising speed. To be honest, I found myself in a difficult situation. On one hand, I really wanted her to get off my boat, but I didn't want to succumb to the guilt and pressure of a bunch of treacherous people who not only rejected me but actually drove me out of their lives completely. If I cut off her hand, it could get me into trouble and stain my deck, or I could cut off the mooring point, which would damage the deck. I didn't particularly like either option, and I definitely didn't think she was worth a dime, much less $1,500 for a life raft. She kept talking to me, so I was still overestimating how much my peace and quiet was worth compared to the rescue boat's perspective when my thoughts were suddenly interrupted by the damn Coast Guard. Being a generally law-abiding person, I anchored. Need I mention that they had a cannon on their bow? They sent an inflatable boat to my vessel with a bunch of gloomy guys in uniforms. I put the android in my small trunk in the wardroom under some cards. They boarded my ship without permission. "What's going on here?" asked the guy leading the group. "Thank God you've arrived," said Marion. "That expletive kidnapped me." She blinked her handcuffs. "Sir, is this true?" "Well, I'm glad you're here too. If we can just find a way to get her off my boat, you can take her with you." "No, I didn't kidnap her, sir. It would be easier if you just gave us the keys and told us what's going on." "I don't have keys." That crazy expletive jumped on my boat and chained herself to it. I looked at their facial expressions and analyzed their explanations through my own lie detector. Silently, I turned and extended my hands. "Do you know how much it hurts when they handcuff you?" The guys on the capture team live for moments like this, just like the guys on the SWAT team. I think one of them came in his combat pants. I was lucky they didn't push my face to the deck. As a kidnapper, I got a star. However, I insisted that they search me for my keys to confirm this point. My shame did not end that day. That man bosun, led by one of the guys, took a screwdriver and freed Marion by unscrewing the mooring point from the deck. Why didn't I think of this? She sat there grinning at me. "Now you'll have to go back. You'll regret this," I said. Not original, but at that moment I felt pretty lousy. There were many questions, but I exercised my right to a lawyer and was taken into custody. The arrest followed quickly enough when I received an unexpected visitor. "Look, let's forget about all this. Just donate your kidney and we can move on with our lives. You'll do a wonderful, huge, heroic thing. My daughter will live, and maybe we can look at this as a bonding moment." "I know we treated you pretty lousy," Marion said, licking her lips and squeezing her husband's hand. "Maybe we could invite you to Christmas." She looked at him nervously. He nodded indulgently. It was nice to see that one of my damn organs had suddenly made me something of an unwelcome guest. "How about this? We'll wait for my trial. Do you know how long it will take? No judge on earth will force me to give up an organ while I'm incarcerated. I hope you have a really good night. That is, if I don't just plead guilty to a lesser charge. I wonder if they will give me 7 years." Both turned pale and knocked on the glass partition until I turned around and left. Strange, but a lawyer was found very quickly. "Hello, Mr. Banks. I'm Matthew Hughes. I'll be representing you." "Oh, are you a public defender?" "No, Mr. and Mrs. Paxton paid for my services." "Yes, but are you my lawyer or their lawyer?" "You raised a sensitive issue." "Not really. If you were my lawyer, I would like a certified letter stating that you are representing me. I also will not accept your defense unless you receive a very large advance from these idiots. I am not going to hire you and then find out that they suddenly don't want to finance it." He thought about it for just a moment. "It works. It really clears up the issue of ethics." Somehow, it seemed to me that the prospect of a large advance was as important as his ethics. Cynical of me, of course. "You will receive the documents tomorrow." The night before I was to be released on bail, I sat in my cell, carefully considering who I was and what kind of person I wanted to be. I didn't want to think that I could look away indifferently while someone was drowning, but when it came to my family, my former family, hatred seemed to overpower my morals. Marion was right in this regard, but in the same vein, obviously, my family was the type to reject someone who was drowning, and they all turned away. Well, I didn't literally drown, I was still breathing. I could find happiness somehow. I still haven't been able to do it, and I know that this was a weak side of my character. They will pressure me into making the right choices, and I will have no defense. Is a relatively harmless medical procedure worth my daughter's life? I quickly retreated. No, not my daughter. I was, at best, a donor as far as my connections with her were concerned. For a moment, I thought about somehow forcing the interaction. Technically, she's my blood. I could insist on the observance of rights. I quickly dismissed the thought. If I could find a judge who would do this, she would still be living in this toxic environment, and she would hate me. How about we take her away from this nest of poisonous snakes? I could adopt her and take her on a world tour with me. It would definitely be in her best interest. I started thinking about the logistics. There was that little cabin next to the main one. I could clear it of some of my things. I started thinking about life jackets, cooking for two, and the fact that I wouldn't be able to walk around in my underwear at home. What if she falls overboard? She was a curious girl, I bet. What if I got distracted? What about school? Will I teach her? Could I homeschool her? It would take a lot of my time that I was now enjoying fishing and doing other things. Then there were the prospects of friends. How would she make friends on a boat? No, the boat would have to be sold. Then I would be a single father with a girl ripped from the bosom of the family. If someone did this to me, I would definitely hate it. I wasn't rich enough to be able to bribe her more effectively than the idiot Marion, and married life on a boat would quickly become boring for a little girl. I sighed. I needed to think about this more. I was leaving with a lawyer when they waylaid me at the exit of a federal building. Wallace, we need to talk. Mr. B. Hughes walked away from me and returned to the building. Speak. I have a federal crime to worry about. I shouldn't be around you since I supposedly kidnapped you. The FBI is involved, you know. It's on my record now. She blushed. Jason and Macy are with her. Dad, I told you before, you lost the right to call me Dad a long time ago. Okay, Mr. Banks. Karen is getting worse. She's on dialysis. You need to help her now, Jason said. I have to go to court. I have to pay taxes. I might even die, by the way. Just so you know, I tore up my donor card and added an amendment to my will that I should be cremated entirely without organ removal, just in case it happens. All three of them looked horrified but with a tinge of guilt when I said that. People are as moral as can be, but desperate times make them do desperate things. How could you think we could do something like that? Macy asked. You've already chosen sides, and I know who you chose. Marion decided to put on some serious grown-up hats. Listen, there's a lot of bad history between us. I treated you badly, fine, I'm sorry. I will regret this for the rest of my days, but it's done. She didn't do anything to you, so we all need to act like adults and do what's best for Karen. You know, when someone usually says, let's act like adults about this, what they really mean is, please ignore all the crap I did to you. She opened her mouth, but I waved her to be quiet. Mr. Hughes returned with two officers. Madam, I'm afraid I must arrest you, one of the officers said. What? Why? She looked at me, lost. Wallace, what's happening? I think the formal charge is giving false statements to law enforcement agencies. Maybe they'll let you visit Karen from time to time. Mr. Hughes played a key role in getting my evidence into the right hands. I needed to shake her cage. Jason started yelling at the officers, and it looked like a fight was about to break out. Luckily, Macy was able to calm him down while Mr. Hughes took me to my motel. It was just my luck that I met them at the hospital. An attractive nurse tended to me, which was quite nice considering the last few years that damn mermaid never showed up. Thank you very much for your generosity, she flattered. Macy and Marion just stared at me. Then smiles appeared on their faces, and they ran towards me. I flinched and quickly dodged behind the nurse. Mrs. Paxton? Miss Banks, the nurse exclaimed. Mr. Banks, she froze for a moment. Mr. Banks here just signed up for the kidney donor registry. She looked questioningly at my daughter and me. Are you related, or is this just a coincidence? Yes, Macy said. At the same time, I said, no. Macy's smile disappeared. The nurse blinked. Okay, I'll just finish the paperwork, she said awkwardly and hurried away. This is a wonderful gesture on your part, Marion began, not catching the subtext. She was a desperate mother, irrational. I'll make sure everyone knows how generous you are." Macy sobbed. She caught my eye. "Not really. It seems that due to moral blackmail, I will still lose my kidney if I want to look at myself in the mirror. So I have to save someone's life. And will you do this?" I asked directly. "What makes you think it's going to be Karen?" I asked directly. "What?" "But you're coming." "I know you're coming." "Yes, but there may be others who are also suitable." "But why don't you help the stranger?" She pursed her mouth and narrowed her eyes. "Because strangers can really be grateful. Strangers can really appreciate that I'm saving their loved one's life, not just think that it's their right because of the time spent together. It would be poetically fair if another little girl could use my kidney. Personally, I would prefer a good, hard-working blue-collar dad with a family that would love to have him around. I would like to save such a family." Macy covered her mouth and ran away. "Why are you acting like this? When did you become such an expletive? I thought I knew you. You know, you cheated on me for 3 years, ambushed me with a divorce, turned my children away from me, and I just left. Of course, I was angry, but I wanted you to bring me back into your life. You keep making your problems my problems. You arrested me, you abandoned me, you took my daughter from me. So now you have no right to talk about who I am and what I have become. Do you want me to fix something? Fine. Let the Paxton clan come the day after tomorrow morning at 8 o'clock sharp. All of them. If someone is absent, I will leave. Make sure you sign the consent so that if we come to an agreement, you won't have to wait for it to happen." I took an envelope out of my pocket. "Macy has a doctor's appointment today. She needs to be there. This is a personal letter." "What games do you play?" she began. "You'll see the day after tomorrow," I replied, turning around and leaving. I sat at the conference table, my stomach churning. Mr. Hughes sat next to the notary. I thought about getting a video camera but decided against it at the last minute on the advice of my lawyer. We learned from the DA that the charges against Marion and me had been dropped, and we were warned against using the criminal justice system to solve family problems, which seemed odd considering I was the victim. Marion was given warnings. They all came in. James Paxton, now in his 40s, sat opposite me, holding hands with Marion. I don't know why he married my wife. Mike came in. I was surprised that he wasn't sent somewhere, perhaps he was on leave for family reasons. His hair was cut short, as befits a military pilot. Jason followed him, and Macy was the last one to enter, late and without looking at me. "I want you to know right away that the doctors have found not one, but 2 donors for my kidney. There's one very good one and another one that is also quite good," I lied. I gave them time to figure it out. They really don't like that I insist on controlling who gets my kidney. They believe that this should be a purely medical decision. But it's better that someone else, even if they have a good chance, gets it. "Why are you so tough?" Wallace James Paxton said. "First of all, you can call me Mr. Banks. I have no questions for you right now. You all want me to take a part of me and give it to a stranger. You're trying to blackmail me into making a sacrifice. Well, you started it, and someone will get a kidney, but it doesn't have to be your little sister. So if you're going to tell me to do the right thing and save a life, I'll do it. Since I agreed to sacrifice for a stranger, now it's your turn. Is it about the money?" Paxton asked. "Money? Just shut up and let the ex-family talk." I couldn't believe what this guy was saying. "First of all, I want a divorce." At their gasps of surprise, I raised my hand. "I don't mean that. I mean you 3. "What do you mean, divorce?" Mike said. "Although there is no legal right for this, all 3 of you are incredibly disappointed in me. You didn't call or write or do anything until you needed something again. Okay, I could have come to terms with this sooner, but now you're following me again. And I want to get out. The last thing you 3 have that I want to take away is my name." I pointed at my ex-wife. "She's Paxton now." I turned to my children. "I want all 3 of you to change your last names to something else." Hughes began handing out forms. "Honestly, I don't care which way it goes, although I suspect it will be Paxton. If I may suggest, Jason, I think Arnold would be a great last name for you. Jason's middle name was Benedict. If it helps Karen get a kidney, I'll be happy to sign. Michael started signing immediately. You've turned into a real dad since you're showing a willingness to sacrifice. Why not start with you? If the others could give Michael and me a moment alone, he said. Confused, they left the room. Macy put her hand on Michael's shoulder as a sign of sympathy. She guessed what awaited him. He looked at her, confused. After everyone left, he glared at me. You always taught me to do the right thing. Apparently, these were just words for you. Considering how well my lessons were learned, I was a lousy teacher. This is a scam. Bad things happen, and you just have to get through it. Tough guy. Military service did not do your temperament or attitude any favors. I like that you think so. Bad things do happen, and they can be caused by outside parties. It's nice to know that something like this is on the way. Friends and family look out for each other. So how do you reconcile your military demand attitude with what happened to me? Mom asked us not to interfere. How nice. So if one officer asked you to do something immoral and wrong, you would agree? I opened my briefcase and took out a bottle, a mirror, and a razor. Let's play don't ask, don't tell. I poured a small amount of white powder onto the mirror and cut it along the lines. Here. And what do you expect me to do with it? I'm guessing it's a banned substance. Assume for your health this is the price for my kidney. He turned the mirror over, spilling its contents onto the shiny surface. Screw this. I won't do this. I don't believe you'll let her die. You'd be surprised what I can do these days, I said in a cold tone. And the blame is on you. See, I am going to save a life. You choose not to help your sister as you please. This really doesn't surprise me because I know what family loyalty means to you. See, she's not rich, she can't do anything for you. He looked like he wanted to throw himself across the table at me. To hell with you. I love my sister, but I'm not going to ruin my career when I don't have to. Do you know how long I worked to become a pilot? Yes, about a third of the time I spent saving my family and marriage. Cry me a river, strong guy. Just give her a kidney. Why are you making this so damn difficult? Why are you trying to hurt us? I just looked at him. He looked down at the table with the powder scattered on it. You know, you're a funny guy. There you are, the big bad exterminator. Have you ever wondered what this really means? It means you have to get on a plane and put your life on the line for a bunch of strangers. At home, you must be willing to die on other people's orders. No, I don't think that aspect of the job crossed your mind. You think it's only about bad guys dying because you can't even risk a sacrifice for someone you know personally. I guess it was all about form and winning, girls. People tell you that you are wonderful. To hell with you. Mom was right to divorce you. Perhaps. Perhaps not. I'm going to save a life, and you, Mr. Big Bad Pilot, now have a difficult decision to make. You thought it might be shooting down a passenger plane, maybe starting a war? No, it's up to you to decide if a little girl will die when you could have helped. No cheering crowd to congratulate you or sympathize with you. Just a simple act for someone other than yourself. You're a selfish jerk. The family will know. They will know that you had a choice and you failed because you love your beautiful form more than your sister. Tell me, when you played with her when she was little, 2 years old, still developing speech, what did she call you? I saw him break. Mick. Mickey. She called me Mickey. Give me your damn poison, I said. I'll do it. He pointed to the half-empty bottle. No, I said, keeping my gaze cold and unyielding. Now you can lick it off the table. Jason came in alone, as I asked, looking very wary. He saw Michael when he left. Sit down, I ordered. You know you've disappointed me the most. You had a wife and children when you did this to me. You should have known better if you loved them. I slowed down. You really love them, don't you? It's better not to make hasty conclusions. Yes, he blurted out. So you should have understood how I felt. Or should have. Dad, under my gaze. Mr. Banks, Mom was unhappy. She had been unhappy for years. I placed the envelope on the table and slid it back and forth between my hands. His eyes followed it. So, was it the years when she cheated on me with James Paxton behind my back, or was it before that? Don't you think you'd want Pamela to tell you if she was unhappy? Or, let's say she didn't have the courage. Wouldn't you want your children to let you know? Wouldn't you hope your children would warn you if your wife was seeing a man while you were away? Wouldn't you want your boy to tell you about it? What do you want from me? An apology? I said I'm sorry. Sorry. I'm still sorry. Yes, you're sorry. Apologies are just words. I flicked my finger on the envelope in the corner, and it flew towards him, catching some air from a random breeze. This is what I want from you. With trepidation, he opened the envelope. Inside was a key card with the quality and logo. What is this? Hotel room number 341. Inside there lives a sweet, attractive young woman free of illness who would like to meet you. In fact, I think you should get to know her in the biblical sense of Gideon. I insist on that. And what exactly does this do? Why are you playing these stupid games instead of just helping the people who stabbed me in the back? Once upon a time, there was a young man, married, mind you, who held his father's marriage in his hands. It wasn't a perfect marriage, but my father fell into it by accident. Like most marriages, it was a work in progress. We know how much this young man cared about this marriage. It's my turn to save your marriage. If you love your sister, you will definitely do this. She is alive even if I'm an indescribable fifth place. Send the video. He twitched to Pamela. You can fix everything. You can explain what an incredible fifth place I am and how I made you have an intim. This may not be the end of your marriage, especially if you base it on trust and honesty. Does she trust you? You can fix it, but it doesn't. Just like I'm not the same anymore. You should have some fun. Consider it a belated birthday present. I thought of something at the last minute. Oh, give me your cell phone. See, I just rented. Is this the term? Rented. Yes. I only hired her for 3 hours. And just to give you a little incentive, since the charges against me have been dropped, I got my boat back. So how much do you value your sister's life? I sat back in my chair and let the swearing begin. After he started to calm down, I looked at my watch. You have 2 hours and 25 minutes left. Macy's coming. And don't forget to leave your mobile phone. Macy walked in, looking like a beaten dog. Dad, Mr. Banks, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. I never put myself in your shoes. You were always strong, the one who raised us and took hard blows. She almost cried. We thought you'd get over it quickly, and you seemed like that. You just started screaming and disappeared, and I thought you hated us. You're right about that last one. She shuddered. But I didn't think it would hurt this much. Not this much. It was and is. Do you know what is the worst thing for me? The most terrible thing in this whole situation. She shook her head. It's because you came back. You came back not because you were sorry, not because you missed me, not because you thought you were wrong, but because you had to. She sat, looking at her hands. Is this why you made an appointment for me to get an EER implant? EER is a permanent sterilization procedure. You took my future away. This is wrong, she whispered. Not technically. You took my future away. I'm just taking your future away. You will meet someone, you will fall in love, you will have a career, hobbies, joys, and friends, just no kids. She began to cry. Maybe you'll appreciate your family more. Maybe Karen will be your adopted daughter. She sat silently, not looking at me, focusing on her hands. That's the whole point. The victim. The doctor. I was numb when she described the procedure. She said I needed 3 days to think about it to make sure I was serious. The doctor said I need a relative or loved one to take me home after. Now she looked at me, her face devoid of any human emotion, just a mask of features that once resembled my little girl. I chose you, Father. I would like you to take this cup from me, but let it be your will, not mine. Bitterness. Such bitterness. Marin met me at the door after Macy walked out like a zombie. "Do you like destroying your family?" she asked venomously. "Sorry, I was on a boat. I was going to Bermuda. I was physically thrown out of this family 7 years ago when each of you chose a side against me. So this justifies how badly you treat your children. They're not my children anymore. You ensured that. I obviously didn't raise them well if they could do what they did to me. But I don't think they'll forget that lesson, not for a minute. So this is revenge? Call it what you want." Suddenly, I felt tired. It had been a terribly stressful day, and I knew it would get worse before it got better. "Do you mind? I'm tired. Being a creep is very exhausting." And indeed it is. "So now it's our turn," she asked, looking at me. "Of course. Let's finish this." As if on cue, Jimmy walked in carrying 2 cups of coffee. He handed one to her, and she blew on it, smiling at him, which was like a knife in my guts. She had a life without me. Mr. Hughes also entered with the notary. He put down his files and sat down next to me. This was my show. "Do you want to know the difference between you and me, Marin?" She took a sip of coffee. "Do I have a soul?" "Very nice. I see you still have your wit. No shame. But soul? No. I wanted to say that you still have good memories. You made a choice, you had children, everything was just wonderful for you. And I have all our past memories ruined. I had to think about my relationship with all of you. You had Macy, Jason, and Michael supporting you. I was thrown overboard. Wallace, how many times can I apologize? The last few years of our marriage haven't left me with many pleasant memories either. No, you kept all your happy memories for Jimmy. You didn't try to save happy times for me. You went from one set of happy memories to another. I could see James wanted to say something wise, but he clenched his jaw. Maybe he was smart. It doesn't matter. I can see in the faces of our children that you want to do something terrible to me. So let's do it." I smiled, but my eyes didn't smile. "James, how's my wife? Is she having fun with you?" He was silent, waiting. "Do you want to know why everyone is attracted to married people? If someone is even remotely attractive, single people look favorably on him. James is a prime example. That's because married people have already erased all the rough edges. In this sense, people are like stones. Look, I've already tamed Marin, and you've decided to take her. James, this is theft. Theft. You saw something beautiful and took it. Are you saying you want her back?" James asked, shocked. "Oh no. It's like chewing gum. Once someone uses it, you definitely don't want it back. Why would I give it back to the treacherous, deceitful Marin?" Marin turned slightly pale at my description but said nothing. That's something to keep in mind for the future. I doubt she has 25 years left, but after 14 or so. Just a word of wisdom, been there, done that. "Are insults part of the deal?" he asked. "No, they are free. But back to my question. You not only took my wife without permission, you took my whole life, what I had, what I expected, past, present, future. You changed my whole life and didn't even ask." I took 2 folders from Mr. Hughes. These are documents transferring ownership. One is for your house. You are transferring it to me. Hughes interrupted me. He made them up in case you wanted to give him something. I smiled and nodded. This other one is for all your movable property. "What is movable property?" asked Marin. Hughes intervened. "It's the contents of your house, your boat, and your cars." I continued, "Your clothes, including the anniversary lingerie you buy, a box of baby clothes, photo albums, trophies, and diplomas. Grandma Marion's cast iron frying pan, your favorite book, the bed you made love in, the yard where you hosted parties for all my friends, all of this. I want it all. You sign, we do the paperwork while you sit here handing me the keys to all of this. The private detective will be watching the house, filming the video. Make sure you don't break in and steal my things. I'm not heartless, I'll let you pack one suitcase of clothes for everyone, including Karen, and all the necessary legal documents like birth certificates, passports, etc. But no marriage certificate. I have plans for this little document. So it's all about the money? Paxson exclaimed. Did I say something about your pension fund? Did I ask for your shares or money? No. These are your memories. This is your life. You took my life. I'm taking yours. Marin had a concentrated expression on her face as this exchange continued. She then opened her purse and took out a pen. Where should I sign? Hughes's assistant set up the documents, and she began signing and dating her name. Stop, said James. He's not allowed to do that. You can't sell a kidney, it's illegal. This is not a sale. We make no promises. Hughes gave me a disgusted look. I think lawyers take on scoundrel clients so they can sometimes feel morally superior to someone else. It's just a request without any offer of reciprocity. Call it compensation for previous grievances. What if we go to the police? He exclaimed. Don't be an idiot, Jim said. Marin, then he won't be able to donate a kidney or he'll end up in jail, and Karen will die. We tried that once. She gave me a look of disgust. This time, it's our turn to come under pressure. The price is too high. We need to negotiate. I'm ready, I interrupted. Did Marin? What's the market price for a little girl's life? Just wondering. I tapped the folders with my finger. But I know my worth. Jim, sign the papers. I've had this house for 15 years. It is everything I've worked for all my life. This is home. That's all we have. I know, and it hurts. It hurts a lot. All her birthdays, all her things, my jewelry. She looked at me and took the gold chain off her neck, throwing it on the paper. Here, she began to remove the rings from her fingers. My rings too. Do you want wedding rings too? I waved my hand indifferently. Don't. I know how much you value such things. She actually growled at me. He grabbed her head and turned her face towards him. Marin, listen, he's just playing his twisted games. He's not going to do it. We can't be weak here. He's just trying to destroy us. Thank you, Captain Obvious. But there's nothing we can do about it. We can wait. We can hope he finds a conscience. We can see if we can find another donor. We can't just give up on everything because of one person. You don't give up on everything, I interrupted him. You still have your health, you still have each other, you still have that oh-so-lucrative job you used to lure my wife into adultery. Marin had enough shame to blush and turn away. So you'll be fine. It's just things that will get lost. No deals. James screamed at me. You need to offer a different price. Marin, he's bluffing. He's bluffing, he shouted at me. Jim, he was going to Bermuda. He is full of hatred and malice. Jim, we can't risk it with our daughter. She doesn't, he started but stopped. There was a pregnant pause. I don't know what you were going to say, but don't say it, she said in very precise tones, but her face was scarred. She turned to me with hatred in her eyes. I hope you're pleased. I sighed. Yes and no. For years, I convinced myself that you were a soulless person who threw everything away for a little money and a young lover. But that would mean that the woman I married was a complete lie and I was a fool for the entire 24 years that you were pretending. But when you just took that pen and signed everything, it reminded me of the woman I married, someone who made good choices and truly cared about her family. Completely wrong. So if a piece of that Marin is still alive, maybe I'm at least partly to blame. But only a piece. When it came down to it, you didn't give me a chance to fight for my family. That doesn't change the fact that when you were offered a choice between things, my voice filled with contempt, and family, you made the right choice. The only right choice. But, and you have to live with this, it was a choice that you denied me. I didn't want a car or half of the pension fund, and I wasn't allowed to keep them because of you. I looked at my watch. It was fun, and it looks like you and James have a lot to talk about. Unfortunately, your other daughter has her own date, and now I have to take her there. Mr. Hughes can represent me. My work here is done." With these words from James Paxton, it was a quiet trip. I was going over the entire last meeting in my head. Marin was not a complete dummy. She was willing to make hard choices for her daughter. Was I a hateful monster? Was I an avenger? Was I teaching them a lesson? Was I exercising my demons, or was I just enjoying my cruelty? There was room for all four theories, unfortunately, and only two of them were at least somewhat flattering. On the way to the doctor, my phone beeped with a text. Jason paid his price. She also added that he cried like a little girl. I sighed and thought back to my post-divorce days. He had 7 years of regrets before we were anywhere near equals. I hardened my heart. It was a typical Oban office. There were lots of pregnancy magazines and pictures of mothers holding cherub babies. The walls were beautifully painted, and there were children's toys in one corner. Of course, there were pregnant women there. Macy's face was tense, and her eyes glittered as she searched for a safe place to look. In the end, she just closed her "Dad." She burst into tears. At this time, the receptionist watched and then quickly grabbed the phone. I was at a loss. I leaned over and grabbed her hand with both of mine. "What is this noise?" screamed a woman in a white doctor's coat. She looked at me, my face looked like death, and at my daughter, who probably looked even worse. I'm told she's already made that decision. I will not operate on this woman in this condition until I get a psych evaluation from a psychologist confirming she's okay. We're done here. Of course, send me the bill, I said in a husky voice as I helped Macy to her feet. No! Macy screamed. You must do this. My sister, no, you have to do this, she said almost hysterically. I led her to the door while the doctor muttered something about security. Dad, it's not my fault. I am sorry. We can find another doctor, I swear I will, but it may take a while. Shoo, I was a broken man. You know what's the funniest thing about being a victim? I barely spoke. Sometimes you just have to be willing to make the hard choices. You paid the full price. In the car, she finally stopped crying. Now what? She asked dejectedly. Now I'm going to the hospital. There was no burst of joy, no smiles, no joy. I don't think we both have that much emotion left inside. Like an old lady, she took a stack of documents from her purse. Here. These are the name change forms. I filled them out and submitted them before I went to the hospital. I don't deserve to be your daughter, and frankly, I don't want to be your daughter right now. I soaked it up and couldn't blame her. I will forever regret that I didn't get you out of that doctor's office before the doctor denied us the favor. You have no reason to believe me, but I was wrong, and yet we still have scars, she said. Yes, scars. Marks of the lessons we've learned. This is a second chance for you. When you have children, make sure you raise them right. Make sure they can't do what we did to each other. Be a better parent. We were traveling to the future. I was sitting in a cafe in St. Martin. That damn mermaid never showed her face, even after 10 years of searching. However, I looked up and down the French beach. There were consolation prizes. An angry young man sat down opposite me without invitation. How can I help you, son? I asked calmly. I'm not your son, he replied. No. I remember my boys, mostly good people, I guess. Made some big mistakes but learned important lessons in the end. And that's enough. Would you like a drink? I asked. No, I don't. You're hard to find. He continued to look at me angrily, and then his gaze became more searching. So, who's looking? My name is Harold Weiss, he said. He did not extend his hand, and there was silence. I, in turn, extended my hand. Okay, Mr. Weiss. Obviously, you already know me, although I don't know how. So, what can I do to help you? He didn't take my hand at first, but finally shook it. He sighed and beckoned to the waiter. He waited for him to bring his drink. This is just too weird. I was expecting to see someone more. More what? I asked. Hateful. Brother Time and the Karen incident have brought a lot of hatred and bitterness out of me. He collected his thoughts when I didn't continue. I married Macy Arnold. Sorry, you remember her as Macy Banks. I knew her both ways. She showed me the forms to change the name, although I never thought of her as Arnold. Macy disappeared after I donated my kidney. In fact, I donated it the same day I ran into the family. In the end, Marin forced James to sign the forms, although it was clear from their faces that it had been a particularly ugly battle. Marin thought that Macy had gone off to do something bad for herself, but I didn't think so. I think she was dealing with a lot of issues. Yes, I stayed at their house during my recovery. For the first 3 days, I had a nurse and spent time delving into other people's lives. They seemed happy in the photographs, but I was not part of this life. When I felt better, I spent time looking at their files. Every picture of Mr. and Mrs. Paxson flew into their magnificent fireplace. Not a single photograph of Mr. or Mrs. Paxson and Karen remained untouched. Any photo of an unknown relative was destroyed. All his trophies, diplomas, toys, and lace lingerie turned to ashes and twisted metal. Apparently, Mr. Paxson played baseball quite well in high school. I thought about destroying all her clothes too, but 2 things stopped me. First of all, I remembered my mother, her church dress, apron, and visitation suit. These were important memories for me. Plus, at the bottom of her dresser was a photo of us all going to Disneyland together when we were a happy family. I spared them in honor of my mother and for Karen's sake. I spent the rest of the month thinking about the future and drinking their cases of wine and a special bottle of 25-year-old Lafroig in a wooden box. It smelled like Scotch whiskey. When I needed money, I would trade in one of her pieces of jewelry. I definitely wasn't going to waste my funds. His clothes, both cars, remaining jewelry, and some select family heirlooms were donated to the National Kidney Foundation. I left the receipts on the kitchen table. It wasn't about money. I decided that I would not try to ruin the life of a little girl with whom I had nothing in common except relatives. I looked at her swing and noticed a small clearing in the bushes. There was a small gravestone with the name Frodo scratched on it, surrounded by a circle of stones and a dried flower. No, I was ready to burn this place to the ground if it was just Marin and James. It was the only other gift I could give to the daughter I would never know. I called Hughes and asked him to cancel the documents. Why did I wait a month? Well, I wanted them to take the trouble to set up a new household with deposits, buying furniture and household appliances. Yes, it was petty at the time, but as long as Macy and Marin showed some remorse, more or less, I still owed James a little. Recovery is a slow process. Since Marin showed that she was still quite sensitive, I left her little notes. She's a beautiful girl. It's a pity that I never knew her, I wrote in their photo albums. I left a few more notes that she would find throughout the year, but overall, I was ready to move on from this family. Illness, moving, fire, all this is stress for a marriage. They got the equivalent of all of this at once. Let's see if good old James can hold it all together when it's raining as easily as when the sun is shining. I didn't wish him luck, but now I had this young man whom I had never seen before asking me for a favor. Macy has been in therapy for a long time, he said. She's better now. She said you were the coolest guy on the planet. He waited for my comment but received none. In any case, when we started dating, she wanted to make sure her husband understood the meaning of the sacrifice. He looked at me again, but I didn't understand anything. I haven't seen her for 3 years, so she immediately told me that any children we had would have the last name Banks. It was non-negotiable. So, you already have children? I asked, feeling a lump in my throat. Greta and Ava Banks, he said. She let me name them. He's less than a year old. And how can I help here? My brother died and had no children, although he was married. I want to continue the family name, but my wife refuses. I think only you can make her change her mind. You were my last hope. I pondered as I finished my Caribbean lager. Can you give me your phone? He handed it to me. Just hold down button 1. Her phone is connected to that button. I looked at him approvingly. As it should be, I pressed the button. It took a while to establish a connection. "Hi, dear. How are you?" There was warmth and affection in her voice. She was glad to hear him. I remembered when someone treated me the same way. I tried to add some roughness to my voice, although it was difficult. "You still seem to be struggling with your lessons," I said. A sigh came from the phone. "Yes, Mr. Banks. What is this all about? What lesson? How did you get that phone?" Her voice sounded stunned. "A lesson about sacrifice and grace. Your boyfriend, your husband, came to tell me what he thinks about how badly I treated you. I think you have a wonderful boyfriend. He risked a lot for this family. Is it reciprocal? Can you give him the right to call his children by his name?" Her tone became artificially light and cheerful. "You know what? I think I'll leave him." There was silence. "Is there anything else?" "Yes," I said, my heart relaxing and my voice becoming hoarse. "I'm sorry, and I'd like to see my grandchildren if you'll allow it." There was a long pause, which was slightly less painful than the 7 lonely years I spent alone. "I think Banks is a great middle name. What do you think?" There was another pause, a little less tense. "When can you come?" It was as if a weight I didn't even know existed had suddenly dropped. Macy had learned her lesson about sacrifice and grace. We all deserve a second chance, even me. What do you think of our short story today? I think this story, although it was short but still as interesting as the longer stories, too bad about the husband, that's all I can say. What's your opinion? Write in the comments. Until new videos.